Hi guys. So I've decided to take you on a bit of a journey with me this afternoon as I use my new Canon EOS R5 for the very first time and have a bit of a play around with the new features that it offers, particularly tracking the ability to track animals and animal eyes and recognize different animals. So I was actually going to put my camera hand strap on, my Spider hand strap, and I did actually put it on, but when I put my hand in there I found it was a little bit restrictive and sort of restricting my ability to reach the buttons and things. Like I felt like my hand was a bit crushed against the side of the camera. So whether I need to get a different hand strap or whether I don't need a hand strap with this camera, I'm not sure. So I'm still in the process of discovering that. So what I have done so far is I'm going to just let the camera show me what it's got in terms of this animal eye tracking stuff. So in the settings, the autofocus settings here, I've got it on servo, so it will use continuous autofocus. The autofocus method, I've got this, I'm putting it on now on the facial tracking option. Subject to detect animals, of course. Eye detection, I've got that enabled. Now continuous autofocus basically means that the camera is continually focusing even though you don't have your either finger on the shutter or thumb on the autofocus on button on the back. So it's basically continuously trying to find focus even though you're not asking it to. So I've got that turned off in the hope that it will save battery life, because battery life is a pretty big consideration with these. So I'm basically going to let it just show me what it's got, I guess, in terms of being able to detect and track animals. So I've got a few different animals here. I've got a chicken right here. This is one of my chickens. This is Taylor, and I've got a few more chickens over there, and I've also got my dogs who are currently running around like idiots down here. And I have a horse over here in the paddock. You can't see just yet, but I'm going to be having a play around with all three of these species of animal just to see how this new Canon R5 goes with that. Yeah, so thanks for joining me, and I'll be back really soon. So I'm currently trying to get far enough away from my animals to be able to photograph them with this long lens. So I thought I'd give you a little insight into what that actually looks like. These chickens, honestly, wherever I go, they follow me. This is proving to be a little bit difficult. Come here. Come here. Oh my goodness. Come here. Come here and sit, girl. Stay. Okay. So I'm basically just starting off with a focus point. It's kind of in the middle. And then I'm letting the camera kind of decide what to keep tracking. I'm just keeping my thumb down on this autofocus on button here. I'll go with this chicken here. So at some point it kind of switches from the face tracking to like the whole body tracking, and then sometimes it recognizes the eye. Oh, Fletcher, dude, you're getting in the way. So I'll just give you a quick preview of what this looks like here. So just reviewing the images on the back of the camera, but you can kind of see when I'm flicking through these images here, the focus square is either big if it's recognizing the entire animal, or it goes small if it's recognizing the animal's eye. So I'm going to move to dogs. So I'm going to get these dogs set up, and we'll have a look and see what that looks like. Okay, I'm back and I'm switching to photographing the dogs. Hopefully they will stay there. So I've got this set up on my lap at the moment, or on my knee. I'll just zoom out a little bit. I have the little screen flipped out here, which is very handy. With this animal autofocus, you basically start off with a square and then you press the focus while it's on the animal. So say I was going to focus on Fletcher right here. I would just press that down and there we go. See how it goes to a smaller point over his eye? So it's basically saying, I'm telling the camera that I want to focus on his face, and it's going, oh yep, I see your face and I raise you an eye. And these are a few I just took earlier. So this is focused on Fletcher's eye. Let's see how sharp this is. Whoa, can even see the little blue bits in his eye. It's pretty sharp. So this was obviously a pretty basic kind of test because the dogs are just sitting there, sitting still. Stay, good girl. But I am going to do some action photos and I will try and find a way of filming that. And I'm really looking forward to whether it's going to be able to maintain the tracking of the eye and the face and even the body when the subject is actually moving. So that will be the next test. So yeah, more to come. So I'm basically just heading down to the horse paddock here. I'm hoping, I have the same problem with all my animals. Whenever I try and do anything with them, they just want to be on top of me. Luckily the dogs have a reasonably good stay. Horses have no concept of stay, and neither do chickens. But we're going to go down and see if I can get these horses actually walking towards me. Now I've actually got my camera holstered, so I didn't end up putting the wrist strap on, but let me just turn this around so hopefully you guys can see. So this is the holster set up, and that's Fletcher in the background. But just so I can sort of do hands-free for a bit, it's just super handy. I love these spider holsters, they're awesome. I'm going to try and set this up on a gate post. Uh-oh, Astrid spotted me. Hopefully you can see me here. So I'm just going to switch this on. I've got it on the same mode that I had before. So it's on the Animal Autofocus. And I'm basically just going to get my exposure right to start with, because I was shooting in the shade before. So I'm just going to take that shutter speed up and the ISO down a bit. And you know what? The beauty of this camera is what you see through the viewfinder is exactly the exposure you're going to get, which is awesome. There's no more guessing about shooting, like getting the right exposure when you're shooting on manual. So that's really cool. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in on her and put the autofocus point on her face. Oh, she's on the move. Now, at the moment, it's recognizing her whole body. It's saying, okay, that's a horse. I know what a horse looks like. I'm just going to focus on her whole body. However I frame this, it's actually keeping her in focus. Astrid's being a little bit wary. She's like, what on earth are you doing there, Mum? I'll see if I can get her to walk over here. Astrid! Come on! Come on, what's this? What's this? She's being ignorant. she's nearly always like straight over and on top of me. But she's like, you're acting weird. I'm going to stay here. This is pretty awesome, the way that it's recognizing her as an animal. And I can put that focus point anywhere on her and then move my framing around while continuing to focus. That is super cool. Oh, actually, do you know what else we've got over here? Is a wallaby. Sometimes the wallabies think I'm a horse when they're down here and they don't jump away, which is amazing. Let me just see. Can you guys see the wallaby over there? Yep. Okay. Totally recognize the wallaby as an animal. I don't know, but that's pretty cool. I'm going to see how close I can get to this guy. He finally saw that I was a human and he ran away. That's pretty cool. I'm going to try and get a different angle on these horses because the light's a bit crappy as well, so I'll be back. Okay, so I've moved position slightly, somewhere where I hope if I lie down on the ground she'll start walking over to me. I'm going to try my hardest to try and get her over here. Astrid! Come on! Astrid! Oh, here comes Astrid. Okie dokie. Right, let's see how we go with her walking towards me. Okay, I'm actually zooming out at the same time here. Did you finally decide to come over and say hello? You're a good girl. What's that? That's my camera. Yeah. Oh, hi. I'm gonna just play around down here and take a few more photos without filming, just to kind of see if I can get anything really cool or find out anything else that the camera is really good at doing. So I ended up following the horses around for a little while after this. With Animal Autofocus activated, the camera seemed to switch from recognizing the entire body of the horse to maybe recognizing the head, but in some cases I wasn't sure whether it was recognizing the head as the head of an animal or just recognizing Astrid's blaze as a pattern that it was following. It does seem to do a pretty good job of continuing to focus on whatever you put that initial starting focus point on. So I'm actually not sure whether it matters whether it's actually using that animal autofocus or whether it's just using its ability to track the thing that you originally focused on. So I guess the jury is still out. The interesting thing is I took the camera to a Brumby camp where there were people working with horses in a round yard. I had animal autofocus activated the whole time. I pretty much never got an image that was not in focus. It pretty much always just continued to focus on what I originally put that focus point on, whether that was a human face or a horse's head or the whole body of the horse. It just kept tracking whatever it was originally put on. So regardless if it's the animal autofocus in action or whether it's just the camera focusing on what you originally put that point on, I don't actually really think it matters too much. It does a really good job anyway. Back onto the dogs, we're going to have a look at Fletcher and Opal in action. Yes, Opal. Yes, you're very pretty. Hi, I'm back. Opal, go away. Go away. I'm going to do some action stuff with the dogs, but it's really tricky to try and film myself while I'm actually shooting action and throwing the ball and doing all that stuff as well. So, Opal, Fletcher, my goodness, they're very excited, as you can see. So I'm just going to just do like a basic overview of what my setup looks like, and then I might end up sharing some of the images from this. So honestly, photo bomb is extraordinaire, you guys. Okay, let's give this a go. Right, here we go. I have the ball, I have the camera. Wish me luck. All right. Oh, I think that'll probably do it. So I'm going to go and have a look at these, put these on the computer, see what they end up looking like. Apparently Lightroom doesn't have the processor to be able to deal with the Canon CR3 files yet from the R5, but I think I can convert them to a digital negative. You can probably hear Opal panting, she's a little bit pooped. All right, cool. I'm going to better go feed the horses and I'm going to have a play around with these images. So thanks for joining me. So overall impressions, it seems to do a pretty good job with tracking. So I was basically just using the animal recognition autofocus tracking. So basically full auto, which is amazing because I have never really used full automatic focus in my life. But I thought I would give it a go. So as you can see, it does seem to track where the dogs run reasonably well. Sometimes it loses the plot a little bit. Also, I am shooting with backlight here, so that does make for a little bit of a difficult scenario for autofocus systems in general. It does seem like things are pretty much in focus quite well. So it's a little bit hard to tell just from the back of the camera. When that little point is on the eye, it definitely looks like it has kept that in focus quite well. I might jump on the computer and have a look and see what these files look like. I'm dying to see. Thanks for hanging out. If it's me, the Slavo, it's been really fun. I've had a good look through these images, just done a basic Lightroom edit, really happy with the image quality. But in terms of autofocus, I had animal autofocus with the eye tracking enabled. I was also using the new tracking case A, which says tracking automatically adapts to subject movement. I thought that'd be one that would be worth trying to start with. So basically full automatic mode, just starting off with a single focus point in the center, which I would put over the dog's face and then just shoot continuously as the dog ran towards me. So the lighting was a bit tricky because it was backlit. It tends to create a less contrasty subject, I guess, for the camera's autofocus system to lock onto. So kind of a bit of an initiation of fire for the camera, I suppose. I started off with, I think, 20 frames a second, so the electronic shutter, and then I switched to just the mechanical shutter, so 12 frames a second. I really couldn't see much difference. I couldn't see any rolling shutter issues or anything like that. So overall, it did a pretty okay job. So in this sample sequence of Opal, I think there's 18 photos here all in a row. There's about an 80% success rate of nice sharp focus on her face. It is a little bit trickier because she's got a ball in her mouth. She's kind of running across the field of view as well as towards the field of view. That always makes it a little bit harder. And Opal also does have the tendency to squint a little bit when she's running and sort of move her head from side to side and up and down and squish the ball with her mouth. So all of those things, I think, contribute to the fact that there hasn't been a 100% success rate on this particular sequence. But overall, I'm pretty impressed with the way the little R5 managed to keep Opal in focus and track her using full auto mode. I've not come across a camera that will do it that well in the past. Generally, I just use a single focus point and manually keep that on the dog's face. That's the way that I've been doing it for years. So it's a bit of a leap of faith putting it in full auto and seeing how it goes. And I'm actually quite impressed. Now for this sequence of Fletcher, I think there's 16 images here. There are 2 where it's lost focus. Basically it just dropped the focus back to around his chest, and then 3 images later it was back on his eyes again. So I think that's pretty good. Now he didn't have a ball in his mouth. He was running pretty slowly. He was mostly trotting, to be honest. So he wasn't going very fast. I think Fletcher's face is also a lot easier for cameras to lock onto and recognize and track because there's quite a bit of contrast in his markings there. So it was a pretty easy scenario, I suppose. There again, there's also the backlight to take into account, which is a tricky lighting sort of situation. So those 2 things probably equal each other out. I think there's probably some more tweaking I can do with the autofocus case settings and some of the other settings in the autofocus menus, but it's a really good start and I am super impressed. Hi, I'm back. We're just going for a little bit of a walk along this lovely track. Beautiful morning. And what I've done this time is actually put my 135mm Canon EF lens onto the camera using the adapter, and I'm really keen to see how this goes, both in terms of, I guess, autofocus performance and image quality. So this is what it looks like. So that's the 135 with the adapter. Go this way. So as you can see, obviously it makes the lens a little bit longer, but it doesn't look too bad and it's not too much of a problem. It's not bulky or heavy or anything like that. So I'm pretty keen to see how this goes. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to film it once again, but yeah, I might check back in later. All right, cheers, bye. So I just want to give you guys a bit of a quick demo of how this Animal Autofocus works. So I've got my camera here and I'm just going to line him up and put the focus point, this is going to be in focus, there we go. Put the focus point on Fletcher's eye. Fletcher, good boy. And see how that like follows his eye, however I frame this and however I shoot, it keeps his eye in focus. I wonder even if I turn it around this way. Pretty good. Yay, good boy Fletchy. Okay, off. Okay, off. Oh, you're so cute. Hey, so I thought it might be helpful to go through some of these other images that I took while I was out walking the dogs that morning. So don't judge me too harshly on the lighting. There was some pretty heavy side light coming in from the left along this path. So we're basically just looking at the performance capabilities of the camera here. So as we were walking along, I was basically just calling the dogs around so they would face me and then trying out the Animal Autofocus with eye tracking to see how it would do. As you can see, this one here is super sharp. Basically, I would just put the starting focus point on the dog's face and then the camera would take over and recognize the face and the eyes, keep those on focus while I held the autofocus on button down with my thumb on the back of the camera to keep it tracking. As Opal turned to the side, the camera actually continued to track her face and recognize that just that one eye. So it's really interesting that it kind of keeps tracking in a 3D kind of way. It recognizes a face, even if it turns to the side, it keeps tracking that eye. As you can see, this one here, again, super sharp. So I just thought I'd see how it would do with a little bit of movement. The 135mm lens isn't really a great action lens. It doesn't usually focus very quickly, but as you can see, the camera's done a pretty good job in tracking Opal's face here. So any softness you see here is user error. The shutter speed wasn't very high. It was only 1/500th of a second. So a little bit of motion blur there, but that's my fault. Again, just another shot of Fletcher trotting along. It's obtained and tracked focus really nicely here for a good sharp image of his face. Here Fletcher was just standing. I just thought I'd see how it would go when his face took up most of the frame. Again, as you can see, it's focused really nicely on his eye. This is super sharp. You can even see the little blue bits in his eye and the reflection. Everything's just crispy, super sharp. There's no front or back focusing with this lens using that adapter. Here I was just switching between both dogs, so focusing on each dog one at a time and then seeing how quickly I could then lift my thumb off the autofocus button, reframe the image, refocus on the other dog's face, and it worked really fast and really accurately. Also changing the framing as well, so that was really cool. This one here, I guess more of a pretty sort of setup shot. Focus was on Fletcher here. The only reason Opal is a bit out of focus is she's outside the plane of focus because it was quite a shallow depth of field. So here I had Fletcher sit in the same spot on the path while I actually just moved the camera around, kept the autofocus on button held down with my thumb, and kept the camera working to track his face and keep it in focus. So I moved the camera over to the left for this one. I moved it right down, but then changed the framing for this one so he was sitting over to the right. The camera continued to track this really well. And then I changed the framing again so that Fletcher was in the center of the image. Again, it continues to track, and in each of these images I've ended up with a really sharp shot, really beautifully focused on the eyes and face. Now these last two images, this is a trick that I'm teaching my dogs to do. Generally they'll only do it for a few seconds before they lose interest. So we're working on duration with this one. I didn't have a lot of time to capture these, but I found that using the Animal Autofocus with this camera was just so quick and so easy to use, and it just locked the focus onto their faces. No more having to move the focus point around with a toggle on the back of the camera, because it's really just a way of focusing and recomposing. Once you've got the camera tracking the face and keeping those eyes in focus, you can basically reframe and move the camera around to get the composition that you want. And you'll always end up with sharp eyes, sharp face. So yeah, super impressed. It really does a really amazing job, and I'm sure that this is going to speed up my workflow while I'm shooting and result in a really high percentage of keepers with nice, sharply focused faces in the dogs that I photograph. Good morning. So I'm just trying out the 35mm Canon lens using the adapter on my new Canon R5. And I'm just also trying out the Animal Autofocus, having a bit of a play around with that as well and seeing just how well it works. So I'm just in my office here. I've got a couple of semi-willing models here and the camera with the adapter, which is a great little adapter. It doesn't make the lens that much longer. It feels nice and solid. It's not bulky or heavy, and it appears to work really well as well. I had to play around with the 135mm lens yesterday. So Opal seems to like it too, don't you, miss? So I've got the Animal Eye autofocus on, and it starts off with this little white square that you see. So I'm going to just hit the AF on button. I've got back button focus set up to lock focus on Opal's eye. There we go. And now I can reframe however I like, and it will keep, see how it keeps that focus point on her eye? It's pretty amazing. Okay, now if I switch to Fletcher in the background, hopefully it'll pick up his face. There we go, it's picked up his nose anyway. And I can move that wherever I want and it will keep his face in focus. And then I can switch to Opal again. Oops. There we go. Pretty amazing. So here we are in Lightroom really quickly, just with some of those images I was just taking. As you can see, these were all shot at f1.4, which is a very shallow depth of field. So there isn't a lot of room for error with missed focus. So I was using Animal Autofocus, which automatically detected Opal's eyes and then kept them in focus however I framed the image. So as we went from her on the left-hand side of the frame to the middle to the right-hand side of the frame, let's just take a really quick look at the focus there. Absolutely perfect focus. Her eyes are very, very sharp in all of these ones. You really can't get much better than that. So again, the R5 continues to impress. I hope you've enjoyed coming along for the ride during my first few days of Canon EOS R5 ownership. I've been shooting with Canon 1DX series cameras since about 2013, first the Mark I and then the Mark II. In the past, I've tried the full autofocus tracking modes on these cameras and I've not really been that impressed with their ability to find focus and then continually track that focus as the animal moves. So my regular autofocusing method with this camera is using the toggle on the back to put the focus point where I want it in the frame, and then I have to move that around if I want to change the composition. So I could not wait to try out the new Animal Autofocus system because it sounded like it had a lot of potential for pet photography, which is what I specialize in. I've also been super keen to switch to the Mirrorless system. Size difference, crazy. But I was kind of waiting for Canon to release something amazing before I made the switch. So as you've seen in this video, I'm super impressed with the way the Animal Autofocus works. From chickens to horses to dog portraits and even dogs in action. Which I think is the ultimate test of an autofocus system. The ability to lock that focus on the animal's face and then reframe before taking the shot is such a time saver. It allows for quick and creative compositions when shooting without having to toggle the focus points around. It really is a game changer. It's also fantastic to see how well the RF to EF lens adapter works. This makes me happy because I love my 35 and 135mm lenses. I welcome any questions or comments you might have on this video, and if you are watching this on YouTube, I would really appreciate if you would subscribe. I mostly share Lightroom and Photoshop editing videos, but every now and then I do something a little bit different like this video. For more pet photography, shooting and editing education, please check out my website at www.learnpetphotography.com. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.